Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed the cleaning cart down the sterile white corridors of the Galactic Medical Research Station. The artificial gravity hummed beneath his feet, and the recycled air carried the sharp scent of disinfectants and ozone from the alien medical equipment. He'd been working these halls for 3 years now, invisible to the researchers and doctors who barely acknowledged his existence. The station orbited Kepler 442b, a frontier world where the Zephyrian Empire conducted their most sensitive medical research. Marcus had ended up here after his transport ship suffered engine failure, stranding him light years from Earth with no way home and mounting debts. The janitorial job paid enough to cover his basic needs and slowly chip away at what he owed, but barely. As he entered the restricted genetics lab on level 7, Marcus noticed unusual activity. Dr. HFY, the station's chief geneticist, stood hunched over a quantum scanner that typically processed samples from the Empire's most important citizens. The reptilian scientist's scales shimmered with agitation, a sign Marcus had learned to recognize after years of cleaning around various alien species. Another negative result, Dr. HFY hissed to his assistant. A graceful being whose species Marcus had never identified. 1,000 years of searching, and still nothing. The Emperor grows impatient. Marcus continued mopping, keeping his head down. He'd learned that being invisible was a survival skill when working around powerful aliens. The Empire tolerated humans as laborers and servants, but curiosity could be dangerous for someone in his position. The assistant spoke in melodic tones that the universal translator converted to standard galactic. Perhaps the bloodline truly died out during the Great Purge. The royal family of Andromache was thorough in their execution of the Zephyrian nobility. Impossible, Doctor, HFY snapped. The genetic markers are too distinctive to disappear entirely. Somewhere in the galaxy, the bloodline of Emperor Zixthul the Great survives. The prophecy demands it. Marcus had heard fragments of this conversation before during his cleaning duties. The Zephyrian Empire had been searching for 1,000 years for survivors of their ancient royal bloodline, believing that only a true heir could unlock some crucial technology or fulfill an old prophecy. It seemed like superstitious nonsense to him, but the aliens took it seriously enough to test millions of genetic samples. As he worked his way closer to the scanner, Marcus's cloth caught the edge of a sample tray. Several vials tumbled to the floor, their contents mixing with the cleaning solution. Dr. HFY whirled around, his reptilian features twisted with rage. Clumsy human, do you realize what you've done? Those samples represented months of collection from the Outer Rim worlds. I'm sorry, sir, Marcus stammered, immediately dropping to his knees to clean up the mess. I'll be more careful. Sorry doesn't restore irreplaceable genetic material, the doctor hissed. He turned to his assistant. We'll have to recalibrate the entire batch. This setback will delay our research by weeks. As Marcus cleaned up the spilled samples, a drop of his own blood mixed with the alien solutions. He'd cut his finger on a broken vial but hadn't noticed in his panic to clean up the mess. The contaminated mixture soaked into his cleaning cloth, which he wrung out into the disposal unit connected to the scanner's waste processing system. Dr. HFY was still berating him when alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the lab. Red warning lights flashed, and the quantum scanner's display lit up with readings that made both scientists freeze in shock. Impossible, Dr. HFY whispered, his anger forgotten. He rushed to the scanner, his clawed hands dancing over the controls. The readings must be corrupted. Run a full diagnostic. The assistant complied, but the results remained consistent. Sir, the scanner has detected genetic markers consistent with the Zephyrian royal bloodline. The match is 97% accurate. 2F. Where? Show me the sample location. The display highlighted the disposal unit where Marcus had just emptied his bloody cleaning cloth. Both scientists stared at the reading in disbelief. The waste processing system? Dr. HFY's voice carried a mixture of confusion and excitement. How is this possible? We need to isolate the source immediately. Marcus continued cleaning, trying to remain invisible as the scientists frantically worked to trace the genetic signature. He didn't understand the implications of what was happening, but the alien's excitement made him nervous. In his experience, when powerful beings got excited about something involving humans, It rarely ended well for the humans involved. The scanner's analysis continued running, breaking down the genetic markers with increasing precision. Dr. Vexhigh's scales shifted from agitated orange to deep purple, a color Marcus had never seen before. The pattern is unmistakable, the doctor breathed. These aren't just royal markers. They're from the direct bloodline. This individual would be classified as having imperial heritage. But sir, the sample came from waste disposal. How could imperial blood end up in our cleaning system? Dr. Vexhigh's head snapped toward Marcus, who was still on his hands and knees, trying to finish cleaning up the mess he'd made. The doctor's eyes narrowed as he took in the human's appearance for the first time. Really looked at him rather than through him. Human, Dr. Vexhigh commanded. Stand up, now. Marcus rose slowly, his heart pounding. He could feel both scientists studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Yes, sir? Quote, how long have you been working on this station? 3 years, sir. I've never caused problems before. I'll replace the samples if you tell me how. Dr. Vexhigh approached him slowly, like a predator stalking prey. Show me your hands. Marcus extended his hands, and the doctor immediately spotted the fresh cut on his finger. A single drop of blood still welled from the small wound. Perfect, doctor, Vexhigh whispered. He turned to his assistant. Prepare a direct sample collection kit and activate the containment protocols for this section. Sir? The assistant questioned. This human may be the answer to our 1,000-year search. If his genetic material produced those readings, we need to verify it immediately. And if I'm right, Doctor, Vexhigh's scales shifted to brilliant gold. The Emperor will want to meet his long-lost heir. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. I think there's been some kind of mistake. I'm just a janitor. I'm from Earth. I don't have any royal blood. That's what we're going to determine, Dr. Vexhigh said, signaling to his assistant. Security barriers began sliding into place, sealing off the laboratory. You're not going anywhere until we have answers. The assistant prepared a sophisticated genetic sampling device while Dr. Vexhigh continued studying Marcus like a fascinating specimen. Tell me about your family history, human. What do you know about your ancestry? Nothing special, Marcus replied, his mouth dry with fear. My parents died when I was young. I grew up in foster care on Earth. I don't know much about my family tree. Interesting. No family records, no documented lineage. That fits the pattern we'd expect from survivors of the Great Purge. Doctor, Vexhigh accepted the sampling device from his assistant. This will only take a moment. Try not to move. The device hummed as it extracted genetic material from Marcus's cut finger. He watched in growing dread as the sample was processed through the quantum scanner's advanced analysis systems. The readings that appeared on the display made both scientists emit sounds of amazement in their respective languages. 99.7% match, Doctor, Vexhigh announced, his voice filled with awe. Direct maternal and paternal lineage to Emperor Zixthal the Great. This human carries the purest royal bloodline we've detected in over a millennium. Marcus stared at the incomprehensible data scrolling across the screens. That's impossible. I'm nobody special. I'm just trying to work off my debts and get home to Earth. You may have been nobody special yesterday, Dr. Vexhigh said, his demeanor completely transformed. But today, you're the most important being in the galaxy. You're not just of royal blood. You're the rightful emperor of the Zephyrian Empire. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of machinery and the distant sound of the station's life support systems. Marcus felt like the artificial gravity had suddenly increased, pressing him down with the weight of impossible implications. I don't understand, he said weakly. How is this possible? My ancestors were human. I'm from Earth. Dr. Vexhigh's expression grew thoughtful. The Great Purge occurred during humanity's early space exploration period. Some of our royal family could have escaped to your homeworld. Over generations, the survivors could have integrated into human society, hiding their true heritage even from their own descendants. The assistant spoke up. Sir, we should inform the Emperor immediately. If this human truly carries the royal bloodline, Yes, Doctor. Vexhai agreed. This changes everything. The prophecy spoke of the return of the true heir during the Empire's greatest hour of need. Given the current threats we face from the Andromedan Republic and the growing rebellion in the outer systems, the timing seems perfect. Marcus's mind reeled as he tried to process what was happening. In the span of minutes, he'd gone from being an invisible janitor to potentially being the ruler of an interstellar empire. It felt like a nightmare disguised as a dream. What happens to me now? He asked quietly. Dr. Vex's eye straightened, and Marcus realized the alien was actually showing him a form of deference that hadn't been there before. Now, Your Imperial Majesty, we contact the current Emperor's Council and arrange for your immediate transport to the capital world. You have a destiny to fulfill. The words, Your Imperial Majesty, echoed in Marcus's mind as alarms continued to sound throughout the medical station. Through the laboratory's viewports, he could see other sections of the facility going into lockdown. Word was already spreading that something momentous had been discovered. As Dr. Vexhai began composing an urgent message to the Empire's leadership, Marcus slumped against the nearest wall. His simple life of mopping floors and emptying waste bins was over. He was about to be thrust into a world of galactic politics, ancient prophecies, and responsibilities he couldn't begin to comprehend. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice wondered if this was really an accident. Had he really just happened to cut his finger at the exact moment needed to contaminate the genetic samples, or had some deeper force been guiding these events? The quantum scanner continued its analysis, revealing more details about his genetic heritage with each passing moment. And with each new discovery, Marcus realized that his old life was disappearing forever, replaced by a destiny he'd never imagined possible. The janitor was gone. The Emperor had been found. The Imperial transport ship times Sovereign's will times materialized from hyperspace with the distinctive shimmer of Zephyrian technology. Marcus watched through the medical station's main viewport as the massive vessel approached, its hull gleaming with the deep purple and gold colors of the Empire. In just 6 hours, his entire existence had been turned upside down. He now wore ceremonial robes that Dr. Vexhai had somehow procured from the station's diplomatic supplies. The fabric felt strange against his skin, woven with threads that seemed to shift color in different light. A temporary crown of Zephyrian silver rested on his head, marking him as acknowledged royalty even before his formal coronation. The escort fleet is impressive, Dr. Vexhai observed, pointing to the smaller warships that flanked the transport. 12 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. The current Emperor is taking no chances with your safety, Your Majesty. Marcus still flinched every time someone called him that. I don't understand why this is happening so quickly. Shouldn't there be more tests? More verification? The genetic evidence is irrefutable, the doctor replied. Plus, the Emperor received additional confirmation from the Imperial Archives. They cross-referenced your genetic markers with ancient records and found perfect matches. You're not just of royal blood. You're descended from the direct line of succession. Through the station's communication system, they heard the approaching ships requesting docking clearance. The voice that came through spoke in the formal, measured tones of Imperial protocol. Medical Research Station Kepler 7. This is Captain Thisazara of the Imperial Guard. We are here to escort His Imperial Majesty Marcus to the capital world for immediate recognition and coronation. Prepare for priority docking. The words, immediate coronation, sent a chill through Marcus. Everything was moving faster than he could process. Just this morning, he'd been worried about finishing his cleaning duties before his shift ended. Now he was supposedly about to become the ruler of a 1,000-world empire. Dr. Vexhai had spent the past few hours briefing him on basic Imperial protocol and recent galactic politics. The information was overwhelming. The Zephyrian Empire was indeed facing its greatest crisis in centuries. The Andromedan Republic had been pushing into Imperial territory, claiming that the current Emperor, Zixthul XVII, was a usurper without true royal blood. Simultaneously, rebellion was spreading through the Outer Rim worlds, where populations chafed under Imperial rule. The prophecy of the true heir's return has been central to our culture for 1,000 years. Dr. Vexhai explained as they waited for the transport to dock. It states that when the Empire faces its darkest hour, the lost bloodline will return to restore balance and lead us to a new golden age. But I don't know anything about leading an empire, Marcus protested. I've never even managed a cleaning crew. How am I supposed to rule 1,000 worlds? The royal bloodline carries more than just genetic markers, the doctor assured him. According to our ancient texts, it includes inherited memory and natural leadership abilities that manifest when awakened. You may find capabilities emerging that you never knew you possessed. Marcus doubted that very much. But before he could voice his skepticism, the station shuddered slightly as the Imperial transport connected to the main docking port. Through the viewport, he could see armored figures moving through the docking tube, the Imperial Guard coming to escort him to his new life. Captain Tisizara entered the laboratory with a squad of guards, whose armor gleamed with the same color-shifting technology as Marcus's robes. The captain was a tall, elegant being with features that reminded Marcus of classical Earth sculptures, but with skin that had a subtle blue tint and eyes that held flecks of silver. She stopped before Marcus and performed a complex bow that clearly held deep ceremonial significance. "Your Imperial Majesty," she said in accented but perfect standard. "I am honored to escort you home." "I am honored to escort you home." "Thank you, Captain," Marcus replied, trying to match her formal tone. "Though I should point out that I've never actually been to your capital world." A slight smile crossed the captain's features. "With respect, Your Majesty, the capital world Times is Times your home. It has been waiting for your return for 1,000 years." As they made their way through the station toward the docking port, Marcus noticed how differently everyone treated him. Station personnel who had ignored him for 3 years now bowed as he passed. Dr. Vexhai walked slightly behind and to his left, a position that the protocol briefing had identified as appropriate for addressing royalty. The interior of the Imperial transport was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The corridors were wide and high, with walls that seemed to be made from a single piece of some crystalline material that reflected light in impossible ways. Gravity felt different here too. Lighter somehow, yet more stable. Captain Tisizara led him to quarters that were larger than his entire living space back on the station. The room contained a bed that could have slept 6 people, furniture that appeared to be grown rather than built, and a viewport that offered a stunning view of the escort fleet. "We'll reach the capital world in 18 hours, the captain informed him. "The Emperor has arranged for you to address the Imperial Council immediately upon arrival. The ceremony of recognition will take place the following day." After she left, Marcus stood at the viewport watching the medical station grow smaller as the fleet jumped into hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of light, then snapped back to normal as they emerged in a different star system. He was further from Earth than he'd ever been, heading toward a destiny he didn't understand. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door opened to reveal a being Marcus didn't recognize, humanoid but with features that seemed to shift slightly when he wasn't looking directly at them. They wore robes similar to his own but in different colors. "Your Imperial Majesty," the being said with another formal bow. "I am Keeper Nixos of the Imperial Archives. I've been sent to help prepare you for what lies ahead. Please, just call me Marcus. This whole Imperial Majesty thing is going to take some getting used to." Keeper Nixos straightened, and Marcus caught a glimpse of what might have been surprise on their shifting features. "As you wish, Marcus. Though I should warn you that the court expects certain formalities to be maintained." Over the next several hours, Nixos provided Marcus with a crash course in recent imperial history and the political situation he was about to inherit. The current emperor, Zixthul.7, had ruled for 60 years but faced increasing challenges to his legitimacy. The discovery of a true heir with verified royal bloodline would either strengthen the empire or potentially create a succession crisis. "The Emperor has publicly welcomed news of your discovery," Nixos explained. "He's presented it as validation of his own rule. Proof that the gods favor the Empire by returning the lost bloodline. However, the reality is more complicated." "How so?" "By law, a verified heir of the direct bloodline has a stronger claim to the throne than a distant relative. The current emperor is descended from Zixthul, the Great's third cousin. You appear to be descended from his direct line. Marcus felt a sinking sensation. So, I'm not just being welcomed as a long-lost relative. I'm potentially displacing the current ruler. The situation requires delicate handling, Nixos agreed. The Emperor is politically astute. He'll likely try to incorporate you into his administration in a way that legitimizes his rule while minimizing the threat to his position. As they talked, Marcus began to understand the complexity of galactic politics. The Empire wasn't just dealing with external threats. It was riddled with internal factions, competing interests, and ancient grudges that dated back centuries. His arrival would shift the balance of power in ways that no one could fully predict. "Tell me about this prophecy everyone keeps mentioning," Marcus requested. Nixos activated a holographic display that showed ancient text in flowing Zephyrian script, with translations appearing alongside. The prophecy of return was written by the Oracle Vex Thul, shortly before the Great Purge. It speaks of a time when the Empire would face destruction from within and without, and how the lost heir would return to restore the true path. The prophecy was written in the flowery, metaphorical language typical of ancient predictions, but certain lines stood out to Marcus. When the false peace crumbles and enemies circle like carrion birds, when the people cry out for justice and the worlds burn with rebellion, then shall the lost child of Zeke-Thul return, born of distant stars but carrying ancient blood. They shall unite what was divided and restore the crown to its rightful place. That's remarkably specific, Marcus observed, almost like it was written with current events in mind. Many of our people believe the oracle possessed true foresight, Nixos replied. Others suggest that prophecies have a way of fulfilling themselves when people believe in them strongly enough. As the journey continued, Marcus tried to absorb everything he was learning. The Empire controlled over 1,000 inhabited worlds, with a population in the hundreds of billions. Its technology was advanced enough to seem like magic to someone from Earth. Yet it was facing serious threats from the Andromedian Republic, which had developed even more sophisticated weapons and defensive systems. The rebellion in the Outer Rim was driven partly by legitimate grievances. The Empire's taxation and resource extraction policies had grown increasingly harsh over recent decades, but it was also fueled by external agitators from the Republic, who were using the unrest to destabilize Imperial control. "What about Earth?" Marcus asked. "What's the Empire's relationship with my homeworld?" Nixos consulted their archive access. Earth is classified as a protected developing world. The Empire maintains observation posts, but has a strict non-interference policy. Your planet is considered too primitive for direct contact. The casual dismissal of humanity as too primitive stung, but Marcus had to admit it was probably accurate from a galactic perspective. Earth had barely achieved reliable space travel to its own moon, while the Empire routinely transported millions of beings across thousands of light-years. As they approached the capital world, Marcus was called to the ship's main observation deck to witness their arrival. What he saw took his breath away. The planet before them was a work of art on a planetary scale. Continents had been reshaped into elegant patterns, oceans had been modified to reflect light in specific ways, and the entire world seemed to glow with a soft, welcoming radiance. "Zephyros Prime," Captain Thisazara announced. "The heart of the Empire, for over 3,000 years." Orbiting the planet were dozens of space stations, each one larger than any human-built structure. Ships moved between them in carefully orchestrated patterns, their running lights creating streams of color against the star field. But what impressed Marcus most was the sense of age and stability. This wasn't just an advanced civilization. It was an ancient one that had learned to shape entire worlds to match their vision of beauty and function. "It's incredible," he breathed. "And it's yours," Captain Thisazara replied. "All of it. Every world. Every station, every ship in the Imperial fleet. Your bloodline built this empire, and now you've returned to claim it." As their transport descended toward the capital city, Marcus caught his first glimpse of the Imperial Palace. It rose from the center of the city like a mountain of crystal and metal, its towers reaching so high they seemed to touch the atmosphere itself. Lights moved through its transparent walls, like thoughts through a vast mind. The reality of his situation finally hit him fully. He wasn't just visiting this place. He was coming home to rule it. Somehow, a janitor from Earth had become the most powerful being in known space. But power, he was beginning to understand, came with a price, and he was about to discover just how heavy the crown could be. The Imperial Palace's throne room was a cathedral of power that stretched beyond what Marcus thought physically possible. Crystalline columns rose into shadows far above, while holographic displays showed real-time information from across the Empire's 1,000 worlds. The throne itself sat at the center of it all, a construct of living metal and flowing energy that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the galaxy. Emperor Zixthul XVI stood before the throne rather than upon it. A gesture that Marcus was beginning to understand had deep political significance. The current ruler was shorter than Marcus had expected, with the refined features and silver-touched scales that marked ancient Zephyrian nobility. His robes bore symbols of authority that had been passed down through generations. Yet his expression carried the weight of someone who knew his time might be ending. "Approach, cousin," the Emperor commanded, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "Let us look upon the face of our ancestors' lost bloodline." Marcus walked forward across a floor that seemed to be made from a single piece of black crystal. Every step echoed despite the chamber's size, and he could feel the eyes of the assembled Imperial Council studying his every movement. These were the beings who actually ran the Empire. Military leaders, economic advisors, planetary governors, and representatives from the most powerful noble families. When Marcus reached the steps leading to the throne platform, Emperor Zixthul XVI descended to meet him at ground level. They stood facing each other, two men whose shared ancestry reached back 1,000 years, yet who had lived completely different lives. "The archives have confirmed what the genetic scans revealed," the Emperor announced to the assembled council. "This human carries the pure bloodline of Zixthul the Great. The direct succession that we believed lost in the Great Purge has returned to us." A murmur ran through the council chamber. Marcus could hear dozens of different languages and dialects as the representatives discussed this revelation among themselves. Some voices carried excitement, others concern, and a few held what sounded like barely concealed hostility. Admiral Kethara, an imposing figure whose cybernetic enhancements glowed with tactical data, stepped forward. "Your Imperial Majesty, while we welcome the return of the lost bloodline, we must address practical concerns. This human has no experience with Imperial governance, no understanding of our military situation, and no knowledge of the alliances that maintain our stability." "All true," the Emperor agreed. "Which is why I propose a period of transition and education. Marcus will be recognized as Imperial Prince and heir to the throne. He will spend the next year learning the complexities of governance while serving as my designated successor." Marcus felt relief wash over him. A year to learn seemed reasonable compared to being thrown immediately into absolute power. But his relief was short-lived as he noticed the expressions on various council members' faces. Not everyone was pleased with this arrangement. Chancellor Voss's Tack, an elderly being whose species Marcus didn't recognize, raised a jeweled hand. "Your Imperial Majesty, with respect, the Outer Rim rebellions grow stronger each day. The Andromedan Republic has begun massing fleets near our border systems. This may not be the time for gradual transitions. What are you suggesting?" "Chancellor," the Emperor asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "The prophecy speaks of immediate restoration when the true heir returns. Perhaps the Empire needs its rightful ruler now. Not in a year's time." The political maneuvering was so transparent that even Marcus could see what was happening. Chancellor Voss's Tack and his faction wanted to use Marcus to justify removing the current emperor immediately. They apparently believed that an inexperienced ruler would be easier to manipulate than the current one. Emperor Zixthul XVII's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a subtle shift in his posture that suggested anger carefully controlled. The prophecy also speaks of wisdom gained through trials. Rushing to fulfill destiny without proper preparation leads to disaster. "Perhaps," Admiral Kethara interjected, "we should hear from the prince himself. Marcus, what are your thoughts on assuming immediate responsibility for the Empire?" All eyes turned to Marcus, and he realized this was his first real test. His answer would set the tone for everything that followed. If he seemed too eager for power, he'd be seen as a threat. If he appeared too reluctant, he'd be seen as weak. The middle ground was narrow and treacherous. "I'm honored by the discovery of my heritage," Marcus began, choosing his words carefully. "But I'd be a fool to think that genetic markers alone qualify someone to rule an empire. The current emperor has 60 years of experience and has maintained stability during increasingly difficult times. I believe I can best serve the empire by learning from his wisdom before taking on greater responsibilities." Several council members nodded approvingly, while others looked disappointed. Emperor Zixthulexvit's expression revealed the slightest hint of satisfaction. "Wisely spoken," the emperor said. "However, circumstances may require us to accelerate certain aspects of your education. Come, let me show you the strategic situation we face." The throne room's displays shifted to show a three-dimensional map of local galactic space. The Empire's territory glowed in purple and gold, while hostile forces appeared in threatening red. Marcus could see immediately that the situation was worse than he'd been told. The Andromedian Republic had indeed massed substantial fleets along multiple borders, and the rebellion in the Outer Rim had spread to nearly 30 worlds. "The Republic claims our rule is illegitimate because I'm not of direct royal blood," the Emperor explained. "Your presence gives us a powerful response to that propaganda. But it also creates new complications." "How so?" "If you remain on Zephyros Prime during the coming conflicts, you become a target. If you leave the capital world, your absence might be interpreted as abandoning your responsibilities. And if something happens to me during the fighting..." The Emperor left the implication hanging. Admiral Keth Ara activated additional displays showing fleet movements and battle plans. "Your Imperial Majesty, if I may suggest a solution, Prince Marcus could take command of the expedition to retake the Outer Rim worlds. It would demonstrate royal commitment to Imperial unity while keeping him engaged in meaningful action." Marcus stared at the Admiral in shock. "You want me to lead a military campaign? I've never commanded anything larger than a cleaning crew. You would have experienced commanders advising you," the Admiral assured him. "But your presence would be invaluable for morale and propaganda purposes. The Outer Rim populations need to see that the Empire cares enough to send its heir personally." Emperor Zixthul.77 studied the tactical displays thoughtfully. "It's not without precedent. Royal heirs have traditionally proven themselves in military service, and the Outer Rim campaign would be less risky than facing the Republic's main fleets." Over the next several hours, Marcus received a crash course in Imperial military doctrine and the specific challenges facing the Outer Rim expedition. The rebellion had been sparked by harsh taxation and resource quotas, but was now being fueled by Republic weapons and advisors. Several worlds had declared independence entirely, while others remained officially loyal, while providing covert support to the rebels. The plan that emerged was ambitious but reasonable. Marcus would command a small fleet of fast cruisers and support ships, along with a regiment of Imperial Marines. His mission would be to visit loyal worlds to strengthen their resolve, negotiate with wavering systems, and demonstrate Imperial power to the rebels. Actual combat operations would be handled by experienced officers, but his presence would provide legitimacy and propaganda value. "There's one more consideration," Keeper Nixos mentioned during a private briefing. "The Outer Rim expedition will take you near the border with Republic space. There's a possibility you might encounter their forces directly. Is that good or bad? Potentially both. If you're captured, it would be a disaster for the Empire. But if you achieve a significant victory against Republic forces, it would establish your credentials as a war leader and strengthen your eventual claim to the throne." As preparations for the expedition proceeded, Marcus found himself caught between excitement and terror. 3 days ago, he'd been invisible to everyone around him. Now he was preparing to command a military campaign that could determine the fate of entire worlds. The night before departure, Emperor Zixthul VII summoned him to a private audience in the palace's ancient library. The room contained archives dating back to the Empire's founding, with some documents preserved in quantum storage that could maintain their integrity for millions of years. "I want to show you something," the Emperor said, leading Marcus to a secured vault. Inside was a simple wooden box that looked remarkably ordinary compared to the technological marvels surrounding it. This contains the personal effects of Zixthul the Great, the Emperor explained. Items that were saved during the Great Purge and hidden until they could be returned to the rightful bloodline. He opened the box to reveal a handful of objects that had somehow survived 1,000 years. A simple ring, a small crystal pendant, and a handwritten note in ancient script. The ring carries the genetic lock that controls the Empire's most secure systems, the Emperor said, offering it to Marcus. It will only function for someone of direct royal bloodline. Consider it proof of your heritage and a symbol of the responsibilities you're accepting. Marcus slipped the ring onto his finger and immediately felt a subtle sensation, as if the metal was somehow alive and responding to his presence. Information began flowing into his mind. Not words or images, but pure knowledge about systems and capabilities he'd never imagined. The inherited memory, the Emperor observed with satisfaction. It appears the ancient bloodline carries more than just genetic markers. As Marcus absorbed the inflowing knowledge, he began to understand capabilities and responsibilities that went far beyond simple rulership. The royal bloodline was designed to interface with technologies that could manage planetary ecosystems, coordinate interstellar communications, and even influence the fundamental forces that held the Empire together. This is why the Republic fears our return to power, he realized. It's not just about legitimacy or prophecy. The royal bloodline has access to capabilities that could tip the balance of any conflict. Indeed. But those capabilities come with prices. The ring will only function for someone who truly accepts the responsibility of rulership. If you're wearing it for personal gain or through coercion, it remains inactive. Marcus looked at the simple band of metal on his finger and felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like a physical presence. He was no longer just a janitor who happened to have royal blood. He was becoming something else entirely, something the Empire needed him to be. The next morning, Marcus stood on the bridge of the Imperial cruiser, Time's Righteous Dawn Times, as his small fleet prepared to depart for the Outer Rim. Captain Thisazara had accepted command of the expedition's military operations, while Marcus served as the political and ceremonial leader. As Zephyrus Prime fell away behind them and the fleet jumped into hyperspace, Marcus watched the stars stretch into lines of light and thought about the journey that had brought him here. A week ago, his biggest worry had been finishing his cleaning duties on time. Now he was heading into potential combat as the heir to a galactic empire, carrying technologies and responsibilities that he was only beginning to understand. But somewhere deep inside, Marcus felt something awakening that hadn't been there before. The inherited memories and capabilities were just part of it. More importantly, he was discovering that he cared about the Empire and its people in a way that went beyond duty or genetic programming. The Outer Rim worlds were suffering under harsh policies and external manipulation. The rebellion wasn't just about politics. It was about real people facing real hardships. If he could help solve those problems while strengthening the Empire, then perhaps this impossible destiny might actually be worth embracing. As the fleet emerged from hyperspace near their first destination, Marcus looked out at the stars and made a silent promise. He would prove worthy of the bloodline he carried and the trust that had been placed in him. The janitor from Earth was gone forever. But what emerged might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The scanner had flagged royal blood in a human janitor, ending the Empire's 1,000-year search. But Marcus was beginning to understand that the search hadn't really ended at all. It had just begun a new chapter in a story that would determine the fate of countless worlds and billions of lives, and he was ready to write it.